If there's anything I've learned from my years and years of consuming Japanese media, it's that suicide is cool. A lot of my favorite Japanese songs are even about it. It's clearly a huge sensation that's sweeping the nation. So while doing research on this fascinating subject, I came across this manga by Atsushi Nakayama. It's called Suicide Girl. Suicidal Garu, not Jisatsu Hojo. I've seen some people get the two confused. I think part of what immediately drew me to the manga was how macabre it was, and judging from some of Nakayama Sensei's other works, it seemed he's familiar with writing more dark humor and more macabre themes, which I'm quite a fan of. But Suicide Girl focuses on a protagonist who's so bright and sparkly that it's literally in her name. Meet Kirari Aogakihara, who might be one of my favorite characters in the entire manga. Part of her character is that she's very bubbly and optimistic, among other things we find out about her later. I'm someone who finds it very endearing when a character has a very intense sense of optimism about them, and here it contrasts very heavily that she really wants to kill herself. As it turns out, Kirari was late to a suicide meetup, and between this and Welcome to the NHK, I'm just going to assume that offline suicide meetups are a thing in Japan. The mass suicide attempt doesn't work. It actually renews the other people's will to live, and Kirari goes off to kill herself at home. There's a compilation of Kirari trying and failing to kill herself in some of the most cartoonish ways possible, which ends with her flinging herself off a rooftop. It's here that the manager of the cafe she was at earlier, his name is supposed to be Lucio. Shit. Informs her that she's meant to save a high schooler she saw in a vision earlier. Kirari eventually manages to catch up with the high schooler at a train station, where she then convinces her to not commit suicide, though she tells her that she'll just be an inconvenience to everyone around her if she tries that, which I found really funny. This scene also blesses us with one of my favorite panels in the entire manga. But as it turns out, this high schooler is going through some stuff. Her relationship with her mother is on the rocks. She's stressed out about a test, and she just feels unloved overall. Kirari, always one to look on the bright side, sees her mother's strictness as her genuinely caring for her deep down, and manages to get through to the high schooler. So all looks well until it's not. We're back at the cafe now, and Kirari has lost her sparkle. I would imagine watching someone jump off onto the train tracks and die would do that to a person. It reminded her of her fiancé, whose name is supposed to be Soru, what the fuck? Who proposed to her just before he took his own life. This is actually the reason for Kirari's suicidal tendencies. She made a promise to die so she could marry Soru in the afterlife. Upon hearing this, Lucio gives Kirari a noose. This isn't so she can kill herself, but because the task Lucio gave her previously isn't over yet. So in the context of this manga, what drives people to suicide are these monsters called phobia. According to Lucio, phobia clouds the person's thoughts and amplifies their negative emotions, pushing them to death. Anyone of any age or status or whatever can fall victim to it, and is, according to Lucio, the reason for Japan's high suicide rate. Yeah, I've seen a few people who are very bothered by that explanation. I can kind of get it, since without context it reads stupid, but also in fiction everything ever sounds stupid when you remove all context. On a purely practical level, I understand that the Magical Girl manga needs enemies for the Magical Girls to fight, like Tokyo Mew Mew had the Chimeras, for example, but also that's just how things work in the context of this manga. It's very clearly not trying to make a real-world statement about suicide. Also, to me, it makes sense that overwhelming negative thoughts, which is what phobia are the embodiment of here, would drive someone to suicide. I was under the impression that that was how that worked. Really, I just think the problem is that they're monsters named phobia. Like, if Lucio just said, oh, it's the embodiment of depression and anxiety or whatever, it would have made more sense, but I don't know. I don't really have a problem with it as is. Though while I'm on the subject, I feel like the manga never actually does a lot with the phobias, and I feel like it's a bit of a missed opportunity. The manga's relatively short. It's only 40 chapters long, and it doesn't really do a whole monster of the week kind of thing. It just jumps from one arc to the next, which on one hand I'm kind of happy about, since it means it doesn't take too long to get through, but also I feel like some aspects of the manga fall flat because of that, namely some characters who get introduced a bit further on into the manga. But anyway, Lucio's cafe is partially dedicated to exterminating these phobia. The group suicide earlier, that was actually an exorcism, which is why those other guys wanted to live afterwards. Apparently Kirari's desire to die was pure, which makes her fit to fight phobia head-on as a suicide girl. There's a transformation scene and a fight scene that I can't really add much commentary for, so I'll just say here that I think the action in this manga is really stand out. The art in general in this manga is stellar, and I want to say that's what draws a lot of other people to it. There are a ton of cool shots and set pieces, the characters are very expressive and emotive, and there are panels I can almost here. A lot of it's wallpaper worthy. This manga is actually one of my most wanted anime adaptations next to these two, if only just because I feel like the action would benefit from it. And I find fight scenes to be kind of hard to follow in manga, but it's also a bit of a double-edged sword. Sometimes I find that when I'm a fan of a manga's 2D art, it could be the case that when brought over to anime, the anime doesn't really do it justice. And I'm afraid Suicide Girl will be like that for me. If I could choose, I'd make the studio that did Onimai adapt this manga. I think that was Studio Bind. I might be biased though, because Onimai is my favorite looking anime ever. Really, I'd want them to animate every anime ever. Every anime ever made would be better if it looked like Onimai. Berserk would actually be good if it looked like Oni. I do like that Kirari has to fumble around like a complete retard for a bit before actually understanding her powers enough to be able to kill the thing. But after the fight, apparently upon killing a phobia, time reverts back to before that person killed themselves. That I'm not going to question, but Kirari kills the phobia, which brings the girl back to life, and it fixes her relationship with her mom. There's a concept that this manga brings up called the joy of life, essentially something you really like that gives you the will to live. You find out in one chapter that Kirari's joy of life, her reason to continue living despite losing her fiancé, comes from helping other people and being nice to them. This manga's whole thing is about mortality and life and death and all of that. And while I'm most certainly not trying to argue that Suicide Girl is somehow unique in deciding to tell a story about mortality, I did just want to say that I really liked it. There are some other characters introduced from here on out though, the first of which being Monten Kinmonbashi, a junior idol and fellow Suicide Girl who has a different view on death. She doesn't see an inherent value in life and thinks that people should be able to choose to die young and beautiful rather than living a drawn-out, agonizing existence. So in short, she's a huge fan of Canada's MAID program. She's cool though, I like her design and art a lot. She was actually a favorite character of mine back when I first started reading this manga. Her whole thing was something I really liked back then, though that's less the case now. She suddenly kills herself on a live stream, which leads to the introduction of the 3 megalophobias. These intelligent humanoid phobias, and their names are... God damn it. I've poked fun at it a few times, and I do want to point out that this isn't a problem with the manga itself, and more so just a weird thing that happens with fan translations sometimes, especially when a project is passed around several different groups like this manga was. But yeah, the character names are translated inconsistently in the earlier chapters. This guy's supposed to be Lucio, Kirari's boyfriend is supposed to be Soru, these two are supposed to be Yugame and Nakare. Later chapters rectify this, and to my knowledge, the rest of the manga is fine. It's not like Nisa localized it. But character names are something that bother me, especially here where you can count the amount of times characters are referred to by name on one hand. I'd love to see a revision of the translations for the earlier chapters, if only to make the names and terminology consistent, but I don't know how one would go about doing something like that. But yeah, you meet Yugame here, and there's a really cool fight scene with her, and after that, Monten finds that her own joy of life is to make friends, because that's something she never really had before. Though, because of that, she's also socially retarded and starts to stalk and obsess over Kirari. The next major story arc in the manga focuses on Akane Niigata, a middle school girl with long black hair, glasses, and big titties. I too would want to kill myself if I hit the wall that early. Her parents died in a double suicide when she was young, so due to this, she feels like she was unloved by her parents who didn't take her with them, and longs for a lover to die with, as she views death in the name of love to be the ultimate form of devotion. Akane is one character who I feel like gets the short end of the stick when it comes to character development, because I don't think we learn a whole lot more about her after this. Like, comparatively speaking, I think we learn more about Kirari and Monten, but with Akane, we learn that she has 3 evil exes, I guess. What a whore. Her arc is pretty wicked though. We see the Suicide Girls fight each other at one point, and this arc's phobia is probably one of the more intimidating ones. We also get properly introduced to one of my favorite characters in the whole manga, Nakare. I really like her design. She's the personification of imperfection and craves acceptance, so she takes it really hard when she loses, which makes me just want to give her a hug. A running theme throughout the whole manga is how something as simple as being kind can change people. You see this with how Kirari interacts with just about every character in the whole manga. Monten, Akane, this one dumb whore she goes to school with, even Yugame, but there are moments where the dynamic gets flipped around, and others have to help her. Kirari has issues deep down because of her survivor's guilt, which is what chapters 9, 14, and pretty much the entire last arc focus on, which makes those chapters very stand out to me. The pain from losing her lover never quite goes away, even when her friends try her hardest to cheer her up. How this manga treats the subject of death and how it can affect people differently is something I really like. There's technically 2 other characters that are introduced after this. the final suicide girl, Luna. She gets introduced in chapters 17 and 18, and I feel really mixed on her. Her whole thing is that after the Jonestown incident, which is an actual thing this manga references, her soul gets trapped in her gun, and she has to possess this other girl, and I don't know if this is a common enough occurrence to call a trope. The only other example of this I can think of is the one girl from Code Geass or something, but I really don't like it. It feels like kind of a waste. Like, we don't really learn anything about Bullcut over here. What's she like? Why did she try to kill herself? What's her relationship with her father? She's cute. I like her jacket and her freckles. I just want to know more about her. I'll give Luna this, though. Her transformation and introduction are really cool. It gives us another one of my favorite panels in the whole manga, and I know what you're thinking, and no, kill yourself. I like Luna's backstory also. She's American, but she got bullied like she was Japanese or something. Like, the shit she goes through is like white flour on the desk levels of insane. So naturally, she begins to become a bit bitter about this, but she then meets Lucio, who insists that she take in this pigeon he found. The pigeon gets bullied by its flock just like she does. Very unsubtle symbolism, but she takes a liking to Lucio and the pigeon, and she begins to find her own joy of life. But because her school is full of fucking psychopaths, you can guess how things go with the pigeon, and consumed with rage and despair, she takes a gun and... Wait, yo!
Is this story based? Yes.
She falls in love with Lucio after awakening to her powers and decides to focus only on the present to get over her troubled past. She feels like focusing on the past is what holds others back, but this ends up contrasting with Kirari, whose entire reason for being alive is because of her past, which leads to a kind of animosity between the two. So yeah, to end things, I really like this manga. I became a fast fan of Nakayama-sensei and his other works because of it, and I try to make sure to bring up this manga whenever people ask me what my favorite manga are. I don't know if the mangaka, Nakayama-sensei, intended for this to be like some super intellectually stimulating and deep work of art, like what some people pretend certain other series are, but I don't know, I just really like how this manga approaches the theme of death and kindness and all that. But more than anything, I like all the art and all the characters. So yeah, that's Suicide Girl. I just think it'd be cool if more people read it. Fine. I'll say it. Trigun.